From Washington, Crossfire, against all odds. On the left, Tom Braden. On the right, Pat Buchanan. In the Crossfire, Peter Staley of the New York AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power.
Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Hundreds of protesters sought to shut down the U.S. Food and Drug Administration offices today, charging the agency with malingering in the fight against AIDS. Some 200 were arrested by helmeted Maryland police wearing rubber gloves. We're trying to shut down the FDA, said one member of the Gay and Lesbian Task Force. The heart of the protests, FDA's alleged lack of urgency in making available all potential cures for the AIDS disease. FDA officials say they are doing all they can and as expeditiously as they can. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Center for Disease Control reports the number of AIDS victims has reached 75,000 Americans, more than 42,000 of whom are already dead. Tom?
Peter Staley, you have the AIDS virus, and I am sorry. But don't you think that the Federal Drug Administration has a responsibility not to let people such as you have quacks to rely on, have nothing but stuff that is not tested and that could cause even more harm than you already have?
Certainly, we feel that the FDA has to play a role. It has to make sure that drugs are safe. It has to show that there's some evidence of efficacy. But at that point, they should be made available to those who have HIV infection.
But the FDA, you can get from a San Francisco market, you can buy T cells. I mean, we have a lot of stupid things running around the country for people like you. And why waste your money and why waste your hopes when the FDA says, look, the only thing we can give you so far is AZT. We haven't tested these other things. We don't think that they have potential for any good.
Because that's just plain wrong. There are lots of drugs out there that have shown evidence of efficacy. Many of them are totally non-toxic. The problem is that the FDA is using the same process to test a nasal spray as it is to test AIDS drugs, and it's a 7 to 10 year process.
But wait
if you
a minute,
have people that are in a life-threatening situation, they shouldn't have to wait around for a drug to be proved 100% efficacious.
Well, Mr. Staley, one more question. You have the FDA giving you a drug. So far, you've got AZT.
Which I can't take because it's far too toxic, and over half the people that have HIV can't take it.
Okay, but the FDA says there is nothing else that is worth anything.
Have you heard of dextran sulfate? Have you heard of PCP, the various PCP prophylaxis like aerosol pentamidine? Have you heard of AL-721?
No, I have not.
Mr. Staley,
these are things I should be able to take.
Mr. Staley, this is going to astonish you, but I agree with you 100%. I think if you've got the AIDS virus, especially if you've got AIDS and someone wants to take a drug and they're willing to sign that they won't hold the people culpable, it's their life, and if they give some hope, they ought to be able to take it. What I want to ask you is whether you know of anything that you think might be some kind of miraculous cure that you think they're sitting on at FDA.
I don't know per se of what is the cure. I will tell you this. There are over 140 drugs out there that the FDA has identified as possibilities and are in some stage of being looked at right now.
Why are they holding back?
Among that 140, there's got to be one or a combination thereof that can slow down this virus or halt it in its tracks.
All right, now look, you have what you call AIDS-related complex. You look very healthy to me.
Right.
You're just simply carrying the virus, is that correct?
I have a few very minor symptoms, and my immune system is virtually shot.
Your immune system is shot?
Almost.
In other words, if there's some, what they call opportunistic disease, and it's floating around, you're going to get it, and you're going to get hit with it.
Right.
What would you like to take that you can't take right now?
I would like to be able to take dextran sulfate legally. I'm taking it on the underground right now.
Well, why not, Mr. Braden?
Because I don't know anything about dextran sulfate.
Well, I'll tell you this. It's an over-the-counter drug in Japan and has been for 20 years.
But if
over-the-counter in Japan?
But if the FDA says that it's untested, it might be harmful. And it might...
How can an over-the-counter drug in Japan for 20 years
Why
be
not let
harmful?
Mr. Staley make that decision?
Because, Pat, there is a government of the United States, and its responsibility is to get rid of this thing that poor Mr. Staley has.
But there
and
is no...
if they're going to get rid of it, they have to know precisely what they are doing.
But the FDA
and
does
why.
not. The FDA does not have a cure for AIDS. This man believes in this. It's being sold over the counter in Japan. Why not have him sign a statement saying he's going to hold harmless the people producing him and let him have it?
Because, Mr. Staley and Pat, if you've got a disease which might wipe out a lot of people and which already has wiped out a lot of people, you want to put your faith in an agency which has the power to test it and approve it and say, look, this is some good, and not go in for the quack stuff.
Well, we're not talking about quack drugs. We're talking about real drugs. I want the FDA to keep the quack drugs off the market. But they have got 140 drugs out there on a list that have to go through trials and have to be sped through these trials. They can't go through this meticulous 7 to 10 year process. I don't have more than 5 years.
But how can the government possibly know what's good for you and what's good for other victims if it doesn't know for sure what the drug is doing? Say you're taking one thing, and then the FDA puts all these things out on the market, and you take some other things that are untested. It might well influence the test so that nobody would know what really caused your problem.
Are you saying that if we release a lot of these things now, we won't be able to get people into tests for the real cure?
No, we won't be
Mr.
able to.
Mr. Staley, I've got one final question for you.
We will mix drugs in your body and in other people's bodies, and you won't be able to trace what drug helped you and what drug hurt you.
I'm only asking that they be released after there's a minimal amount of efficacy,
well,
not a
Tom,
100%
let me get something
test.
in here. You've got the pink triangle on your shirt, silence your
correct.
address. I gather that means you're homosexual.
Yes, it is.
Do you know? I don't know how you. Do you know how you caught the disease? But more important than that, if you're 27 years old, you say you got 5 years to live. Looking in the camera, what would you tell some kid? Say you had a younger brother, 21 years old, who also might have homosexual tendencies, or say he's 17 or something like that. What would you tell him if you wanted him to live a long life?
I would tell him to use a condom.
Would you tell him not to engage in homosexual activity?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I believe that I believe in safe sex. I'm a sex-positive individual. I still have sex myself.
Mr. Staley, I saw a study out in California. They tested the condoms. 40% breakage rate in one kind of condom. Isn't that insanity?
No, basically that's because of lack of education. There are similar studies that show that if people are properly educated in how to use a condom, and also to use a lubricant, by the way, that has
Aren't you
the
mean
medicine
this is Russian roulette?
It is not Russian roulette. It is Russian roulette to not give people this information when human nature dictates that they're going to go out there and they're going to have sex anyways. We're sexual beings, and it's just going to happen. Either you're going to provide them the information.
Why? Let me ask you this. Why? Now, we know a lot of young men your age I grew up with. They went into seminary and they didn't have sex. They haven't had sex their whole lives after they went to seminary.
I think that's probably not true. I would think.
You mean celibacy is impossible?
I think celibacy is very rare, and if you're going to preach celibacy, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. People aren't going to do it, and lots of people are going to die. Now, would you rather have a lot of people cheating on their celibacy with thousands of people dying, or would you rather save those lives and let them have sex?
I think that, well, I don't think we got time to go into that subject. We're going to take up a new one when we come back, and that's the most controversial proposition in America. It's Prop 102 in California, and it deals with the AIDS virus. 2 new guests when we come back.